Hi, everyone. I was noticing that people were putting on blurbs for their presentations and posters, so I thought I might as well give it a shot. I will be presenting on a project that I have been working on for almost 2 decades to attempt to empower ethical consumers. It's resulted in 6 editions so far of this little book, The Better World Shopping Guide. There's a website, Better World Shopper, and an app, a free app for phones. But it really is trying to answer the question, how can we make ethical consumerism effective in a space which is otherwise dominated or colonized by corporate marketing and greenwashing, advertising, and essentially misdirection and spin. So what I am trying to do is essentially inspired by our political issues in this country, which are really based on the fact that no one can tell who is telling the truth and who is lying, and we're not very good at tracking it or stopping it or moderating it. And we have similar issues in the corporate sphere. So consumers are really essentially struggling when they are trying to make the right decision about what companies to support. And while I know many critique this model for being armchair activism and, the lazy man's guide to social change, etc., I do think that it plays an important role. Again, I think about it very much the way I think about in the political sphere, voting. So is voting important? Yes, I do. I actually think it's quite important. Will it solve all our problems? No, it won't. In fact, it's just sort of a minimum bar. It is something that we have to do. We should be better informed voters. We need better quality information. We need to educate people more about it. And then we need to have them engage more often in the process of voting. So not just once every 4 years, once every 2 years, plus any smaller elections and primaries that come up, but people are just not particularly engaged. And I think part of it is because of how terrible that setting or environment is that they have to operate in, and how they know that they're just being victimized ultimately by that environment. Well, I feel the same way about ethical consumerism. It's not going to solve our problems. But if we don't figure out which companies are essentially the most destructive, and which ones are trying to move in the right direction, we cannot navigate and we cannot redirect the monies that are going to these companies in a way that is thoughtful. And again, it's not just individual consumers, buying organic or fair trade. Some of these decisions essentially find their ways into how retirement funds are invested, or college endowments, or mutual funds. There's all kinds of ways in which this is multiplied. What other businesses work with that are trying to do right, or even what nonprofits do with their money. Instead of giving their budgets to the companies that are working directly against what they are fighting for, I think it's important for us essentially to take this on as a project of mapping power and keeping power accountable. We cannot expect government institutions to be functional if they are not transparent and we don't hold them accountable. And we can see some of that going on right now. Corruption persists and grows as long as we don't have transparency. The same is true for any other sphere, including the corporate sphere. If we don't bring hard data to bear on what these powerful institutions are doing, who are in many ways substituting themselves for nation states in terms of their economic muscle in the world, then this power will corrupt. And while we're so focused on, political change, we will have ignored the shift over to economic power in these corporate institutions, and thus have no mechanisms or tools to work with. So my project over the last 20 years has been an attempt to catalog all of the hard data we have available to us as a public, essentially synthesize all of that data in a giant database, tracking what we have over the last 30 years or so, and then trying to use or wield that data in a way that holds companies accountable. And the first way in which people come across it is through, trying to make decisions about everyday shopping. But again, that really is just the first step in this equation. So I'll be talking more about this in my discussion on Friday. And I would love to hear your questions before I even start the talk. In fact, to be honest, I'm so bored of giving talks like this. I am only interested in answering your questions. I would prefer to answer your questions more than give my talk on the subject matter and talk about my latest paper. So if you do have a question, please send it beforehand. I would love to integrate that into my presentation. And yeah, we'll go from there.